navigate faster and better. All right. Would you like me to start already?
Maybe just, Bernadette, would you like to make an introduction for everybody when we go live on YouTube, and then maybe the introduction in Portuguese, just welcoming everybody for the event, and then welcoming Sergey, thanking him, and then he can start. Would that be okay? So maybe we'll go live, and then you can start. Just a little introduction, so it's not right away with Sergey presenting. Introduction for everybody when we go live on YouTube, and then maybe the introduction in Portuguese, just then welcoming Sergey. I think maybe we'll go live, and then you can start. Just a little introduction, so it's not right away with Sergey.
Ok. Então, nós queremos agradecer a presença de todos aqui para ouvirem o professor Dr. Sergey Kuznetsov, que gentilmente aceitou estar presente nessa semana da música, com essa palestra tão valiosa a respeito de sonatas de Beethoven interligadas com algumas partes da teoria de Schenker. Bom, Dr. Sergey, ele iniciou seus estudos musicais no conservatório em Moscou e depois no conservatório Tchaikovsky, e onde ele recebeu alta distinção. Depois, enfim, hoje, atualmente, ele mora nos Estados Unidos e venceu diversos concursos de piano, recebeu diversos prêmios, primeiros prêmios importantíssimos, e atualmente ele trabalha, então, ele desde 2011 é membro do corpo docente do Lone Star College Montgomery em Houston, Texas, onde desenvolveu um programa de piano muito próprio dele e organizou uma série de eventos educacionais. So, Dr. Sergey, it's a big pleasure to have you with us. Now you have all the time to expose your research. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for a wonderful introduction. I really love the sound of Portuguese. Maybe someday I will start learning. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is several ideas I have to share, several ideas I have acquired throughout the years. As we all know, here Beethoven is one of the most popular composer of classical era. We hear multitude of performers and interpretations of all kinds. If you open YouTube, like I did yesterday, I found thousands of performers from amateur to professional. You can find multitude of editions of all kinds, editions that are accurate, not so accurate, good, not so good editions. There is a huge variety of editions and performers. There is no shortage of performers of Beethoven. But as an educator, and I travel a lot around the countries, and I talk with students, teachers, and parents, I feel there are some gaps in understanding of Beethoven's music, Beethoven's style, Beethoven's composition. Usually in competitions and festivals, you hear the standard set of sonatas, let's say like Beethoven's popular music, Moonlight Sonata, of course, Pathétique, well, definitely Furelise is there. And these works have earned the reputation to be popular or easy listening. Everybody loves them. Everybody admires them. But that doesn't really cover the entire Beethoven's repertoire and legacy. So how do we find something real, something related to what composer had in mind while working on the piece? Really authentic. Is it really enough just to study his biography or funny facts about his life and make decisions about interpretations? And how to identify gaps in our knowledge of Beethoven and attempt to create meaningful interpretations vs meaningless interpretations? How do we distinguish meaningful vs meaningless? So far is good. You can hear me? Everything's fine? The sound?
Yes, everything is fine.
Okay, good. So yes, my theme today is meaningful interpretations vs meaningless interpretations. I think meaningful interpretation is not just about the pretty sound or rendering, legato, staccato, pedal, or dynamic markings correctly. It's beautiful, but it might not be meaningful. So meaningful interpretation is a deep understanding of the composer's design and architecture of the piece. Architecture of the piece. I would like that to be the key word of today's lecture. Architecture of the piece, architecture of the composition. I will explore some avenues that might help understand the composer's legacy deeper from theoretical analysis angle rather than musicological point of view. Also, at the end of my lecture, I will speak about the Beethoven's repertoire options that have been unjustly neglected and disregarded by generations of pianists. And I think it's worth trying to explore the variety of Beethoven's repertoire and explore pieces that have been unknown. But nonetheless, great pieces. Also, as a bonus, at the end, I would like to explore some cadenza options for Beethoven's piano concertos. And that is also another interesting area that has become standardized. We only hear one or two cadenzas and no more. And to make it more interesting, we can explore some more options. There are some wonderful Beethoven concerto cadenzas written by multiple pianists and composers. All right, so let me begin with my first section, Beethoven's modernism. I would like to speak a few words about what is modernism. Modernism, such as a universal phenomenon, driving force behind science, social structures, arts, and research. In culture, in society, in the history of the civilization, modernism is something that provides the direction forward. Somebody comes up with a new idea, and that idea becomes the norm. Then next generation comes up with a new idea, and that becomes the norm. This is how societies move forward. This is how culture moves forward. Of course, that phenomenon happens in music as well. And we see the development of music with the help of modernism behind it. Every composer provided something new that nobody has done before. Some kind of new idea, new style, new technique. Of course, for the generations, the contemporary generations, that sounded like a shock. Everything that surrounds modernism sounds like a shock. Remember the fact that Beethoven didn't wear a wig. You know, it was a shock for people around him. It's like probably now not wearing a mask or something. So modernism in music happened as early as Gregorian chant, when the Gregorian chant started developing something new into a polyphony. Then polyphony developed into other genres in the Renaissance and Baroque era. And of course, every composer would bring something new to the table. Beethoven is not the exception. Beethoven is the greatest, one of the greatest modernists among all the composers. Not only did he bring something new to the table, he inspired a later generation of romantic composers to explore modernism to its maximum. And also, we know that every composer up to 1950s and 60s used the ideas modernism. In my opinion, the last splash of modernism is an American jazz in music that has influenced many art forms in the 20th century. Right now, we live in the era of postmodernism, in which we look back and evaluate what was happening centuries before us. So with all that legacy that we have, and definitely with all that Beethoven's legacy that we have, we try to make the best out of our performance experiences, out of our listening experiences. So what can we do to enrich our experiences? Let me double check if we are still on the video and audio, because I cannot see anybody.
Okay, we are here.
Because I only see myself, so.
So okay.
All right, so let me continue. All right, Schenker. In my opinion, Schenker is one of the most outstanding researchers in relation to Beethoven, because during the time of Schenker, that was the era of the multitude of different editions and different publishing of Beethoven's music, and not always the best, with a lot of inaccuracies, with a lot of mistakes. And Beethoven actually was, Schenker was actually the first researcher who suggested and recommended the use of urtext as an authentic source from which performers can acquire their ideas and make decisions about their interpretations. So that idea of urtext comes from Schenker. This way you will get connected with Beethoven's original thoughts and original ideas about his music. So also Schenker, instead of emphasizing divisions in music as it's usually traditionally perceived, such as exposition, development, recapitulation, and coda, Schenker offered an idea of unification of larger musical sections by pointing significant so-called structural points, and also introducing the concept of prolongation. Prolongation of an important harmony that lasts along musical sections. Prolongation can be thought of as a way of generating musical content through the linear elaboration of simple and basic tonal structure with progressively increasing detail and sophistication. If you have questions about what I'm saying, you can always ask me and I will clarify. Typically, the note or harmony of the highest hierarchical significance is the tonic, as we all know from our theory class. Next is the dominant, and this is said to be prolonged across durations of music that may feature many other different harmonies of a lesser, of a fewer or another level of hierarchical significance. So in other words, the direction from tonic to a dominant, it's the most significant, and the rest is less significant. So it's like if you compare your journey from, let's say, from your house to your work, that's the most important points of destination. But you can take a break and visit a Starbucks, especially in the morning, and then you can pick up some cookies or something like that before you reach your destination. You have to make several stops, but the most important destinations is the point A to point B, the beginning and the arrival. So this is what I would like to say about prolongation and structural points, typically tonics and dominance. And I will speak about that in detail when we examine sonatas, Beethoven sonatas. Understanding tonal harmony, linear progression, and direction helps you understand the background of the piece better, therefore allows for so-called structural hearing term, which is widely used in Schenkerian analysis. So let me clarify what Schenker understands by background, middle ground, and foreground when it comes to the analysis. So the background is the direction between the structural points, the most significant notes of the harmony, such as, for example, tonic to dominant. This typically it is a baseline. Typically it is a baseline, and especially that works when we understand how composers were trained back then. That's the first subject they learned before they start composition was figured bass. And a figured bass, of course, it gives them the idea of the initial design of the piece, even before the chords or harmonies are created. Figured bass, and if some of you don't know how to translate it, that is basso continuo in Italian. The basso continuo discipline is the technique that composers back then in the days, that's what they learned, the first basso continuo technique. So that is the background of music. The middle ground of music is actual chords progression. It is actual harmonies that create relationships between each other, create directions and resolutions, dissonance, consonance, intensity, relaxation, and etc., etc. So this is the middle ground music. And the foreground music, right in front of our eyes or our ears, it's actually what contributing to the style. It's different types of arpeggios, octaves, chromatic scales, different techniques. You see a lot of it, of course, in Scarlatti's music, in Haydn's music, or Mozart loved it. Especially he loved tonic prolongations in his codas. So he would not just be satisfied with just a couple of arpeggios. He would have one passage and then he will repeat it again, but with a different combination, and then again with a different combination, and again and again and again, to show off his masterful techniques, of course. But all that will be just one chord, let's say B flat major or F major or D minor, like in his D minor concerto. So those are several important ideas about Schenkerian analysis: the concept of the structural points, the concept of the prolongation, and concept of a background, middle ground, and foreground in music. So when we apply these ideas to Beethoven, we start to see what was in his mind even before he started to compose the actual music. We start to understand that before Beethoven starts to even thinking about the motive or a melody, he already has the plan. He already knows what key he will start, where would be the structural point, and how he will get out of the structural point to move to another structural point. So it is really like the architecture design, you know. Before we build a building, we have to have the design. We have to have everything planned way ahead. And this is what you feel when you actually apply Schenkerian analysis, that everything starts with that background design, and then comes to another level, middle ground level, and then a foreground level, of course. And the foreground level is the music that we know. So far, everything's clear, right? Because you can hear me, you can see me, because as I mentioned before, I do not see anybody, right? I only see myself. Hello? Oh.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah,
I hear. Yes, because sometimes it is a little strange, because I do not see anybody, I do not hear anybody. So it's just to make sure that the connection is on. That journey from tonic to dominant and then dominant to tonic allows for binary structures such as sonata form. As traditional musicology claims that a sonata has three identifiable structures, such as exposition, development, recapitulation, to three major sections, and then there will be a transition between the themes in exposition and the coda at the end. However, if we apply Schenkerian analysis, we see that sonata form becomes a binary structure. Which in the first section we clearly identify the journey from tonic to dominant, and in the second part the journey back from dominant to tonic. And to prove that idea, it is enough to just examine Scarlatti sonatas, let's say K466 in F minor, which is literally monothematic. It does not have two themes. Haydn sonatas, Haydn uses a lot of monothematic sonatas, which the first key and the second key, the key of the tonic and key of the dominant, do not display two significantly different themes, but rather same themes, just different keys. Like, for example, Haydn Sonata C-sharp minor, Hoboken 36. And then you can just write it down, and you can listen to the sonatas a little later to prove my point that a Scarlatti sonata starts in F minor, and then it ends, the first part ends in C minor, the key of a dominant, and then the second part starts in C minor and goes back to F minor. It is the very commonly used technique of sonata writing. And to so what Beethoven does with that binary structure sonata is very interesting, because as we know, starting with Mozart, he started to use a new musical themes for the second key, because he's so full of melodies, he couldn't help it. He had to insert some melodies. He actually would insert a new melody into a transition section, into a second key, into ending or the coda. So it's because he's a composer who is based in opera. He's heavily influenced by vocal music and opera. Here I would like to speak what Beethoven actually brought to sonata to enrich this binary structure, and to prove to be a strong modernist composer who brings something new that nobody has done before to the sonata, and how he will transform the sonata, and that transformation will be the source of inspiration for later romantic composers. They will take this modernist ideas and they will develop it into its full potential. All right. First, as you probably have the list of your sonatas, first, let's look at very first sonata, F minor, Opus 2, number 1. Let's see. So let me just, if you have your score in front of you, like I do, you see that it's a sonata that influenced by Haydn. It's dedicated Haydn. It's dedicated to Haydn, and it almost sounds like Haydn. It's written in a very much classical form, and classical, in my opinion, means clarity. Everything is very clear. The theme is in F minor. We don't have any confusion about it. It's a very clear presence of the key of F minor, and it's pretty much the main theme is based on the ascending arpeggiated passage. And the second key, of course, as a traditional second key for the minor key sonata, is the relative major key, A flat major. However, A flat major is not the structural point here. The structural point actually will take place at the end of the development. That is our structural point, our destination, the key of the dominant, or dominant pedal, very significant compositional device favorited by Beethoven and can be found in his sonatas as well as other symphonic works. In some overtures, the dominant pedal becomes so significant that it will become as the climax of the entire piece. And that's not by accident, because it is a really a structural point. So everything that happens before that dominant pedal is actually a prolongation of tonic, regardless of divisions to multiple different sections. So here comes the idea of Schenker, is how to unify the larger chunks of music instead of concentrating on divisions. Let me just play it, and I hope the sound will work out. And let me play the beginning and the dominant pedal right away. Okay. Wait. So that is the main theme, of course. Of course, you know that this is a very popular sonata. Let me start it over again. So, of course, that is the beginnings. And let me find the dominant pedal section. I think it's right here. Come on. It's minute 56 second. I don't know, my player doesn't want to play it. I don't know why. Let me put different settings. I don't know if the video froze. As you notice that all what I played from the minute and 56 second up to here, it was a dominant pedal or dominant prolongation, the most significant structural point in the composition, and then it moves back to a key of F minor, and then the rest of the piece is just actually prolongation of tonic. So pretty much, if we just have it, three structural points. First, it's the beginning, the prolongation of initial tonic, then the journey towards that dominant pedal, 5, and then return back to the home key of F minor, a prolongation of F minor, back to tonic. A very, very simple structure without any innovations so far, very classical, very much Haydn influenced. Now, let's move on and look at Sonata Opus 2, number 3, C major sonata. It is also dedicated to Haydn, and pretty much the clarity here is very apparent. It starts in C major, and the second key of G minor, G major, sorry, the key of the dominant happens at the end of the first theme. The second key in the G major, and then at the end of the in the middle, at the end of the development section, there is a dominant pedal. Everything's pretty much structurally similar to the first sonata, even though in between the structural points we find a variety of different keys Beethoven is traveling through. And sometimes the keys are pretty unusual, which is already the sign of what's going to happen, what something interesting is going to happen with Beethoven in the future. If we just look at the keys he's passing through, is the key of G minor, it's the key of D major, which is a dominant to G minor, and it's a C minor, it is E flat major, it is F minor, it is right after F minor we have the key of F sharp minor, so it's F minor and F sharp minor is something already of chromatic. Plus he also has this false recapitulation in D major, so all that is the prolongation on the way to the structural point, which is the dominant pedal. I don't know if I can find all that in the performance here. All right. Well, let me just play the let me just play the beginning, and let me move it to the key of a dominant. Okay. C major. As you can hear, that the key of C major is very well established. We have no doubt that the sonata is in C major. The C major is very well confirmed here. And the second key, we right about where I stopped, is the transition point when we arrive to the second key, and classically that is G major key. And let me skip right to the development. And I would like to play through the whole development, and I would like you to hear how frequently Beethoven travels from different keys. Almost every measure he introduces a new key. Well, this is the development. This is what development is about. But the choice of the keys, that's what matters. And that's what makes us feel that Beethoven is about to say something new, some new word in music. So let me go ahead and find the development section here. That's not. Let's repeat. Okay, so that is the end of the exposition. And I would like to say about this particular performer. He slows down at the end of the exposition. I personally disagree with that because it creates the division between the section and does not provide the straightforward movement towards the structural point. So obviously, this performer never heard of Schenkerian analysis, and you can hear that he emphasizes the division rather than unification. All right, let's hear the development section. And pay attention to multiple different keys Beethoven is traveling through. False recapitulation in D major. And here we arrive to dominant pedal, and that is the structural point. And for some reason, the performer decided to slow down here, which structurally does not make any sense. So this is what I'm talking about. The structural hearing of the piece might give you some different decisions about the interpretation of the piece. Sometimes these unnecessary tempo changes or slowdowns or romantic rubatos do not really make sense when it comes to the architecture of the piece. So the architecture starts to fall apart a little bit if the performer doesn't understand the tonal plan that Beethoven had in mind before he composed the rest. Okay, so let's move on. That was Opus 2 number 3. Well, to explore other innovations Beethoven provided in his sonata, let's move on to our favorite sonata, Opus 13, Pathétique. Pathétique. Probably we don't even need the score. Everybody knows it by memory. But let's just talk about Pathétique. What's happening there that even unusual for Beethoven himself. Well, first of all, that is the opening theme. It's an opening theme in a style of the French overture. And we know that what French overture is a Baroque genre that typically can be found in Bach's music and Handel's music and other Baroque composers. You know what French overture is? It's a small dot rhythm, tam, ta-tam, ta-tam. That's the French overture rhythm. And we have that slow introduction right here. And the main theme, of course, in C minor. Traditionally, if the sonata is written in the minor key, as we saw it on Opus 2 number 3, the second key would be a relative major key. So we would expect E flat major here. However, instead of E flat major, we see E flat minor. E flat minor, which is the for classical era quite an unusual key. And obviously that E flat minor is the prolongation of a tonic if we use a Schenkerian analysis. The end of the exposition brings us another slow section.
Sergey, could you please give us the measure number?
A measure number?
Yes, if possible. Because like this, we can see quickly.
Well, I don't have measure numbers in my music, but like, for example, if we just go by sections, like, for example, at the end of the exposition, grave section, that is the beginning of the development in pathétique. Well, what the most important to see is the first key. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Measure 11. That's the first theme and the first key, the C minor. Of course, that is the very popular theme, Allegro di molto e con brio. That's the first key, C minor. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 40 measures after, 40 measures, a long first key section, 40 measures after we have E flat minor section, which is second key, E flat minor. Let me play it on a, let's see. The thing with YouTube is just a lot of commercial, which is annoying. All right. Okay. So that is the slow introduction. Where is the... Where is it? That is the first theme in C minor. Now it's a second key, E flat minor. Quite an unusual choice of the key. And I want to skip right to the end of the development section to that structural point of the dominant pedal. And let me find it. It's really difficult to see. Okay, so I think I will play the whole development, and you will see how he is passing through multiple different keys to arrive to a structural point of the dominant pedal that will resolve back into a C minor. Sorry, that's not it. I cannot find a. I think it's the repeat. Yes, it's the repeat. Yes, that is the development. And here we're arriving to the structural point of the dominant pedal. And coming back to C minor. Does it make sense? So when you start paying attention to these things and structural point, the sonata becomes more in shape. You see the design behind it, and everything else is changeable. All these keys between structural point, they like colors, you know, that change each other. But the most fundamental pillars of the structure are there. And one of them is, of course, this dominant pedal, which I believe that should be taken into consideration while making decisions about the interpretations and about how to distribute the dynamics, how to distribute the tempo changes if necessary, and how to distribute the articulation. And I would like to, so those are quite early sonatas. And now I would like to actually speak about sonatas that provide true innovation already. And traditionally, we believe that these very popular sonatas like Appassionata, Tempest, Wallstein are quite innovative. But I would like to point out Sonata Opus 14, number 2, and see what's happening there that nobody has done before. And it's a very, very mild sonata, very peaceful, very relaxed, very. Somebody would think that it's very atypical to Beethoven because we expect music to be very turbulent from Beethoven, but this sonata is very peaceful and dreamy, and there are lots of beauty in it. Page 178. So let's look at, however, even though this sonata is often neglected, there's lots of interesting ideas, even for Beethoven himself. What's the exposition is pretty traditional. There is the first key, G major. There is the second key of D major. The interesting thing is happening in a development section. And in development section, we, for the first time, experience a Neapolitan chord, which is A flat major. Neapolitan in G major is A flat major. So let me find it and play the development section for you. And of course, there is the structural point, which is dominant pedal, because Beethoven is following the classical design. I will jump right into the development of this sonata. So you can hear the transformation of multiple different keys. Again, false recapitulation and dominant pedal as a structural point, and then the resolution returned back to home key, G major. Okay. The only thing that I need to find the right spot. Oh, right here. Okay, so that is the beginning of the development. Come on, it's not playing. Wait a second. Okay, let me do it again. And key of A flat major. False recapitulation in E flat major that will lead straight to a dominant pedal in few measures. Right here. And that is the structural point, the central point of the whole sonata. And return back to first key, G major. So that will give you the idea how to interpret Beethoven's developments and see what is happening there, how quickly he travels through multiple different keys. And then he will choose a certain key, such as this one in A flat major, and he will stay longer on that key to emphasize the importance. So the A flat major is a Neapolitan harmony in the key of G major, and Neapolitan harmony and a dominant pedal G will form the tritone A flat D. And the tritone, if you listen them as a prolongation suggests in a longer chunk of music, it will create a sort of intervallic intensity, the tritone intensity that I believe should be displayed in the interpretation of the sonata. So here in the sonata, Beethoven starts to explore these distant relationships between the keys within one movement. And of course, later in his sonatas, it will become more and more clear. And I think I'm just going to jump to the next sonata right away to demonstrate this idea. So, in fact, I will speak about two sonatas at once. It's a sonata opus 31 number 1 and Wallstein, because these two sonatas have something in common. 31 number 1. It is also a sonata in G major. Of course, everybody speaks about Wallstein sonatas. That's one of the most popular sonata. And we know that a lot of things, a lot of innovations happen in the Wallstein sonata. But this sonata comes before Wallstein. He composed it earlier than Wallstein. However, he already exercised the innovative ideas that will he later repeat and expand in Wallstein. It is also sonata in G major. The first theme is very clear, G major, and the second key is clearly arrived to D major, right here. However, later on, he uses the second theme in the key of B major. It's the key of a mediant, G major and B major. So his second theme is in the key of the mediant, not in the key of a dominant. And that is something new, something that nobody has done before. And during that time, it was pretty revolutionary. So let's just go ahead and listen to the exposition of this sonata, and I will comment on the themes and the keys. Okay. I'll just play entire exposition. G major theme. Now, let me stop right there and see that the very first note is in G major. And once the phrase ends, he plays the same theme one whole step lower on F natural. So G and then one whole step lower F natural. The same device will be used in Wallstein when he will start the phrase in C major, and then few measures after he will repeat the same phrase in B flat major. So remember that. There's I do not think it's an accident. I think it's planned. Arrival to a key of the dominant, D major. And of course, G major again. Preparation for the second theme. And a second theme in the key of B major, the key of a mediant. And it is very interesting that he ends exposition in the key of B minor. So G major to B minor. And we expect the second key and the end of the exposition to be ending in the key of D major, in accordance with classical tradition. So that is something new that is happening in this sonata. And of course, at the end of the development, you hear the structural point, dominant pedal. That becomes very typical of Beethoven's sonata form. And I'm not even going to play that dominant pedal. Trust me, it's there to save time. You can later on play it through yourself or play through the YouTube video, and you will see that dominant pedal is there. Unfortunately, I cannot give you the measure number because my score doesn't have measure numbers, but you will find it there at the end of the development section. In the recapitulation, however, instead of the second theme, instead of being in a tonic as a classical tradition, it's in the key of E major to be a submedian. So here comes that median-submedian relationship, something something innovative that nobody has done before. And now, when we go to Wallstein, we see very similar ideas happening, but with some additional features. So let me open Wallstein 394. And throughout this sonata cycle, you see the transformation, how slowly but steadily Beethoven thinks about something that he can provide, something of modernism can provide even for himself, to do something that he himself has not done before. Not only some other composers who haven't done any new things, but even for himself, those ideas are revolutionary. So let's look at Wallstein sonata. And as I mentioned before, the opening happens in C major, and in the very second measure of Wallstein, we see F sharp right there. What F sharp is doing in the key of C major, right? So definitely F sharp is trying to move away from C major right away. So his intention is not to establish C major, but rather run away from C major. That's what he wants. And in measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the 5th measure, we see the proof of that. We are jumping into the key of B flat major right away. The whole tone below the original key, the same that happened in Opus 31. So obviously we can see that establishing the tonic is not the goal right here. The goal is actually the journey away from tonic. And that is completely different if we compare this sonata with the very first sonata in F minor, where when you can clearly see the establishment of the key, very classical. And here in Wallstein, we do not see these ideas. We see something the opposite, creating the variety of the keys rather than establishment of the original key. And also, as you can see, that the choice of the second key here in this sonata is E major. It is again the mediant relationship. It is not the traditional dominant. It is E major, the key of the median. And speaking about structural points in the development section, we see that the dominant pedal is elaborated here, and it's enhanced with the passage work. Let me jump right into it so I can. So that's Wallstein.
Grammarly does more than catch error.
Okay, so 3:15. Let me start. C major, B flat major. So this is how it starts. Now let's jump into a second key. So this is the sonata that is known for this type of innovation, the median relationship between first two keys in the exposition. Let me try and find. So what happens here, that is a structural point of the dominant, happens at the end of the development. And then at the coda, as usually referred by musicologists, and the second development in the coda is expanded in order to establish and confirm the return back to the home key of C major. Just let me, of course, that would be easier if I would just play it on the piano, but any questions so far? Because
Sergey, could we have some minutes for questions?
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So we have like maybe like 13 minutes for questions.
13. I will ask. I am asking for my colleagues.
Okay.
Yeah, we have, now it's 11:48, so we can have 12, 13 minutes would be perfect.
Okay, let's so we actually discussed quite a few sonatas. So I think it's enough material for right now, even though I have 3 more sections, but let's jump into questions right away.
I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, thank you very much for your lecture and sharing with us your thoughts about the interpretation of Beethoven sonatas. My question is, think about the practice of our students as they saw or will see this lecture. I'd like to know if you have any suggestions or to our students in how to apply this knowledge in the process of learning.
Okay, yes, this knowledge definitely should be taken as an angle or an alternative perspective in order to sort out the editions, good ones from bad ones. If we see that the edition has a lot of unnecessary additions or too many retardandos or accelerandos or enhancements or something like that, it's definitely something extra. So as Schenker suggests, we need to go back to Urtext and try to find out what is the original plan of Beethoven it was. Like, for example, if we are moving from tonic to dominant, right there. So how much are we ready to break it down into smaller sections? Do we really make a big retardando at the end of the exposition just because it sounds pretty, and we are going to break the architecture of the piece just for the sake of that retardando? Or we're just going to skip retardando and glue these sections together to see the direction straightforward, to keep the structure, the architecture of the piece together. So the decisions like that should be made based on the analysis of the composition and the tonal structure. And I think for listeners, it would be much more clear the intention of the performer, instead of creating these extra retardandos or extra expressive devices, such as like rubatos or anything like that. Instead of that, to see a larger picture, to see the larger design, and to introduce it to audiences. And that doesn't mean that the performance should be dry. It doesn't mean that at all, that really nothing happens. It's just what type of crescendo, how much crescendo should we apply? What type of retardando, what type of accelerando should we do, and at which proportion, at which size? Like at a structural point, probably it will be more significant than in between. So to understand the measurement of multiple different expressive devices. So I think Schenkerian analysis will help students understand which crescendo is more important, which crescendo is less important, where to put emphasis, in which section put more emphasis, in which section put less emphasis. And I think they will have a clearer vision once they apply this analysis in their studies.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. I think there is a question in the chat. Let me see. Right, there is a question in the chat, but I don't know how to open the chat. Oh, right here. So somebody asked me, what do you think about the repetition of the recapitulation? Beethoven suggests repetition in many of his sonatas, but they're not always done by the performers. Actually, I like repetitions, and why not? And especially if Beethoven suggests a repetition, so I think repetitions should be done. But you, as a performer, can find the solutions how to make repetitions different. So you don't have to really copy and paste and just repeat exactly what it was. You can give a little bit of the variation, so it doesn't sound boring or predictable. It is my opinion, because Beethoven's music is beautiful, so why would we cut it? So that's what I think. Anyone else? Well, if there are no more questions, I would like to make a little conclusion how to avoid stereotypes and cliches in the interpretations.
Yes, give the time.
So the stereotypes and cliches in Beethoven style, what I found lately, the stereotype number one that you hear everywhere is like Beethoven is the wild composer. And you see one very popular conductor who turns conducting into a tremendous shaking, as we must witness the most dramatic seismic event in the history of this planet. Or another stereotypes of cliches of extravagant interpretations that are very theatrical. I will answer that question in the chat later. Very theatrical, with a whole spectrum of possible facial expressions and facial muscles to produce, or some performers use a lot of clothing decisions and supposedly hope that will somehow enrich interpretations. Those are all, of course, quick gimmicks similar to a famous showman, illusionist, or comedians in Las Vegas, such as David Copperfield or Liberace, but really have little to do with Beethoven and his music. My personal opinion about Beethoven is Beethoven was not really a wild person as he usually depicted in popular culture. He was very well educated, very deep philosophical and intelligent artist of that time. Of course, he had a turbulent life, and throughout his life he had health problems, and we all know that. But that doesn't really make him wild or crazy or extravagant. So instead of just following these cliches that have been circulating in the musical circles over the years, I would suggest that we study music, study tonal plan, study sonata development, how each sonata is different from the sonata before, and what he is bringing new to the table with each sonata. And we discover a completely new, different world, rich of different thoughts, rich of different events, and definitely the expansion of the horizons of the tonality, questioning tonality. As Richard Wagner once said, composition is the art of avoiding tonic. Everything that happens before the final resolution to the tonic, and that is what is valuable, that is what is essential. All that definitely will inspire romantic and post-romantic ideas. And in the early 20th century, we will see Alban Berg's sonata in B minor, which nothing in the entire sonata tells you about B minor except for the last chord. So, and that can be traced back to Beethoven and his search for innovation, his search for revolutionary ideas, even within his own musical framework. And please note that we did not even talk about late sonatas and quartets, which is a completely new word in the world of music. We just touched a little bit of the early sonatas, and we already see how many new things are happening and how great of the modernist composer Beethoven is. If any more questions, then I think it was another one in the chat. So let me see. Are you referring to the arrival at the dominant pedal as the middle of the ersatz over the fifth in the fundamental bass? Yes, structural point. Also, could you talk about the initial ascending? How is it related to the beginning of the ersatz? So the ersatz is actually like the background structure of the Schenkerian analysis. So pretty much the idea that it starts with the initial tone and it goes down, like let's say in a C major, C, B, A, C, B, A, G to G, and then it goes down to from G back to tonic, from tonic to dominant, and then to dominant to tonic. Basically, the Schenker idea was that that is the fundamental structure for all of the works of the Common Era, works of Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, Schubert, and Brahms. And he claimed that all that can be found on a background level. And if you study this, you most likely will find that in a structural point and all that stuff. However, you also need to remember that all the analysis shares some kind of a degree of a subjectivity, and especially a Schenkerian analysis. So it is not really science like biology or physics, where anything can be proved rock solid. But at least Schenkerian analysis can be used as a tool to hear the music in level, to identify the structure that will help bring larger pieces of music together. So the main idea of Schenkerian approach is unification as opposed to division. So this is why I actually chose Schenkerian to speak about Beethoven, because I think it will help students understand how to think larger sections instead of smaller sections.
Thank you, Professor Sergey. We have some comments here. Thanking you for your lecture. That was a very illuminating conclusion. Very good points. I think we can, so you already answered the questions here that we had. Alexandre Dietrich had another one following that. About the indication of dynamics, what is the relevance in relation to the divisions in the sessions, and the indicative highlights of harmony. And then Beethoven does these divisions, always thinking about these divisions, are they all congruent? Maybe we can use this as our last question.
Well, let's just quickly go through the sonata genre, like what is really a sonata. Of course, Beethoven knows what sonata is very well, and he wants to stick with the genre. And when sonata was first initially created, it was sonare vs cantare. So sonare means to sound, cantare means to sing. So therefore, sonata was the instrumental piece, a piece for an instrument. And sonata, usually, if you look at Scarlatti sonatas as the initial Baroque sonatas, you will see a binary form right there. It will start in a tonic, and the first part will end in the key of a dominant. and then the second part will pick up in the key of a dominant, and then go through multiple different tonal transformation and resolve back into tonic. So that was the model formula for the sonata, and of course Beethoven knows that. And then when in the times of Haydn, the tonic and dominant turns into two so-called divisions, like they would call it first theme and the second theme, although Haydn would use the same theme for that, creating monothematic sonatas. And that will kind of create some sort of the division, but that division is illusory. It's the division on the surface. On the structural level, there is no division, really. And then when it comes to Mozart, Mozart was so full of different melodies, so he would not use the same theme for the second key. He would not even think about that, because he was so full of melodies. Of course, he would use a completely different, sometimes contrasting melody for the second key. He would use a new key for the transition, a new melody for the transition. He would use a new melody for the coda. Every time he has a chance to insert a new melody, Mozart would insert a new melody. He was one of the greatest melodic composers of all times, and we know all of that. He would generate a melody while eating, while sleeping, while doing other things. He was just like, generate the new melody 5 minutes. And of course, that will create divisions, because every melody is different. But again, these divisions are on the surface. The fundamental structure doesn't go anywhere. And we still see that fundamental structure that can be observed in the Scarlatti sonatas. They are still there in Beethoven sonatas. These a direction from tonic to dominant and back from dominant to tonic. So in answer Alexander's question, yes, there are these divisions, and there are the musical themes, and especially in Beethoven sonatas and later Romantics music, but we do not need to treat these divisions as fundamental divisions. Those divisions are on the surface. The background level is still more important. It's still more unifying, the same as it used to be in the Scarlatti sonatas. So once we understand the development of the sonata from Scarlatti to Beethoven, the clarity and the importance of the background level will become more and more important when we analyze Beethoven sonatas.
Thank you. Professor, we could stay here and discuss this vast subject for hours and hours, and it's amazing to be able to
look at thickness.
Right.
Beethoven sonatas, yes.
Exactly. And it's a real pleasure and a privilege to be able to listen to you talking about this and sharing your time and your knowledge with all of us here today. But also in respect of your time, we passed about 10 minutes here of what we expected to be. We would like to thank you very much for your generosity, for sharing with us your time and your knowledge. Thank everybody that's here with us, also participating, and we hope we have another opportunity in the future where we're not restricted to this online only and pandemic reality. We can actually exchange knowledge in a different situation. Thank you very much for coming to our event, for opening our event this week. It's a very, very special participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, and it was pleasure. It was pleasure as well. I hope we will collaborate when we have a chance and when everything goes back to normal.
Yeah. Muito obrigada, pessoal, por participarem, e fiquem atentos aí ao restante da programação. Nós temos um concerto a 1 e a tarde também repleta de outras atividades. Nos vemos no próximo. Até mais.
Thank you.
Vamos ver.